with countywide PD.
Or the parents.
I was actually thinking of there were a number of parents who had indicated that this presented a bit of a burden in terms of their children. And
Right. There seemed to be and I'll own it, right, but there seemed to be a bit of a surprise that even though the schedule went out, that we didn't, at the beginning of the year, make an announcement, hey, look, this is happening. And several people said, if I had known, right, I got the schedule, put it on the refrigerator like everyone does, not thinking that this was going to be a change. And so we'll make that very clear. Yeah, right. No, there was a lot of good feedback, and we certainly don't dismiss the folks who. Right? And the same way with the teachers, I said, running 3 to 1, but there, for every 3 there was one that had some concerns about the county-wide days. And so the caveat is that for our singletons, our school nurses, our guidance counselors, our art teacher, our music teacher, who may not have someone in their building to collaborate with, they want to have an opportunity to go to PD that is specific for them. So I'm working with the principals and the director of student services to make sure that there's opportunities for those folks on that countywide day, but the vast majority of our staff are the teachers and offering the specific PD for us. Right now, it seems like it's a good fit. I have some staffing updates. Happy to report our new Student Support Center supervisor, Nicole Gambarini, started today. Gambaroni, I apologize. Gambaroni started today. Our new AD taking the place of David Pugh is Patrick Colvin. And at Morris School, we've got Laura Zink as the building clerk and Robert Bolger as a special ed teacher. Those are all the staff updates. And then next is our Director of Student Services, Brian Kelly, with his presentation on multi-tiered system of support.
room to scooch down or around or?
Do you want me to do the thing?
I was kind of all over county today. I was up at Who's sick? Somebody that Jeremiah mentored, so it's nice. Mr. who is the principal in Concord,
I apologize, Brian, I thought I had this one.
I'm glad he gave me the job.
No? But it sounds good, doesn't it? Sounds healthy?
Sounds like
That's what I'm on now.
Sounds like it's doing something.
That's when we're like, hi, live TV.
So want me to unplug and replug it?
Try it, just try it.
The good old.
Right?
There you go.
Hey!
What happened now?
Thank you for your patience, sorry.
Oh, no, that wouldn't happen there.
Let's go to the other side.
Oh, is it that?
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe just twist it and let go.
Let go.
How does it make it forward? let's just do that. I don't want that. Can you get it back out of there?
We're good. I got it.
Okay.
I got it. We're good.
Okay.
Just give me a nod or a thumbs up.
Thank you for bearing with us on a technical delay. I'm happy to be here tonight, even with a hoarse voice, so just excuse I've had this cold for about 2 weeks. But to talk to you about the multi-tiered systems of support. You remember, some of you last year, we did a presentation for you about multi-tiered systems of supports, as well as our timeline in Lenox to sort of bring this framework sort of to life here over a number of years. So not that we're not doing any multi-tiered systems of support now, but it was more like we need a better effort to get some fidelity across the district, really, and looking at this so that we can provide all the necessary supports for all students. So tonight, what I want to do is just give you a little refresher, and then also just give you a brief update of where things are at, so you just kind of can know that where we're heading and what we've accomplished so far. So first, I'd like to just ground us again back into what multi-tiered systems of supports is. And this has a number of bullets, but really it's a tiered framework that provides students for all students, the support for all students. And there's 3 levels of support. And so if you want to advance even to the next slide. So this graphic is often used to sort of help sort of layer that out. And at tier 1, this is really where you're getting your universal whole class differentiated instruction. So this is all students get this, and it should be the core curriculum with any differentiated instruction, any accommodations that are reasonable for students to help them succeed in the classroom.
Hey, Brian, could you just define differentiated instruction for me?
Sure. So if, for instance, if a student's not doing so well with a particular lesson, it could be in math, for instance, and they needed something to happen a little bit differently than what's like the traditional lesson there, they might do something a little bit different there to help all learners get that, right? So they might sort of back up and say, what's some things I could do to help scaffold this or make this more available for students in the class.
Thank you.
So yeah, so that we're expecting that there is some amount of differentiation for students. It's not just one way, right? Like if a student isn't getting it, you have to look at all learners in your classroom.
Yep. Okay.
So if you're noticing that there are some students, though, however, that are not responding to the core curriculum, and this is where really having data available to you and regular progress monitoring and check-in and screening, where you would see that if some students aren't doing well with that, they might be sort of then looked at a student support process or within data teams, and that they would then be probably brought up for a possible tier 2 intervention, which could be more targeted group instruction. So for instance, this could happen for anything, whether it's behavioral, social, emotional, math, ELA. So some folks start to think of your tiers like, if you need tier 3, you need that for everything. That's not necessarily the case, or tier 2 for everything. You could be a fantastic English student, but you need some more help in math. You might need a tier 2 intervention and have a small group where they sort of take you and have some reteaching of that lesson, right? Going back to some of those foundational skills, taking a look at that with a small group. It should be easy to sort of get into that and easy to exit criteria once you've made enough progress.
Brian, when you talk about a small group, is that, once you're talking about tier 2, does that mean it's now outside of the regular class?
Might not be
or
outside,
It
it could be inside, but it might be outside of the class. So it really depends. We have students that receive Title I services, for instance, at the elementary level. And some of those students, those are really considered like a tier 2 intervention, some targeted support, where we sort of are flagging some students that do need extra support, and we're putting those students into some interventions. So it could happen out there. We could be doing, at the back table, it is possible that you could be getting some more targeted instruction at a back table in the room. It's not as traditional That's a lot of times just still in-class support, not necessarily a targeted group intervention, but it could be.
And how do the tiers intersect, if at all, with 504s and IEPs?
Good question. So that's when you get to sort of like tier 3. Typically, if you're still not responding to a tier 2 intervention, and so we've come to like maybe a student support process a couple of times, several times, and said, look, we've looked at this data, the student is still struggling, we have scores that are below, and they're benchmarks for whatever reason, or we've tried behavior plans or social emotional support plans, and those are not successful at this level. Now we think we need to put something more individualized together. Those can exist without a 504 or an IEP plan, but often people do think of a tier 3 intervention certainly would be considered in one of those because you are getting the highest level of service or support, and it is tailored to your unique needs. So once you are receiving something that's out of the class, prescriptive, with a real focus on some goals and objectives, typically on an IEP, those would be a tier 3 intervention, but you could be getting a tier 3 intervention, a behavior intervention plan, for instance. If you were getting that support, that would be a tier 3 intervention, but it doesn't mean you need to have an IEP to get a behavior intervention plan. That makes sense.
Brian, I don't know if it's the right time to ask this, but what is the, within the school year of a student, how does the review process work? Like, how often does it come up? How do you know when to review? When do you know when to, how much data is collected?
Sure. Teachers are ongoing collecting data for one, right? So all classroom teachers have both formal and informal collection of data. And then we do progress monitor students regularly. The benchmarks, we do those sort of quarterly, like those happen with like a fall benchmark, a winter benchmark, a spring benchmark. So there are targeted times when we look at those, like they have to do a prescribed benchmark, but there are monitoring for students all along. So we look at those. Teachers will bring those to what's called like a student support team process if they think that there's a concern about a student sort of not meeting those levels. So there's ongoing collection of data, and anytime somebody's not making effective progress, they can bring that forward and say, I'm having some concerns about a student who's not making progress in this area. Can we please review it? The team's job then is to really look at that data and everything that's been done for a student, and then decide whether or not we need to do any more interventions or anything else to support the student, and so plans can happen, or we might decide to move to an evaluation, which could happen either through that process, our own internally, or sometimes parents are also, because they're called into the process when a student is not doing well, to come in and meet with some teams. They may decide also, hey, I would love to see my child have an evaluation because I'm just not sure that they're making enough progress and we're not sure why. So this was going back to just as a review, where we had our plan in place sort of to take a look at what would we need to do in Lenox, at least sort of moving forward over the next number of years, carrying out into probably, I think we had it out to 27 or 2028, taking a look at the different steps we would have to go through in order to sort of accomplish a system where we would be doing this with more fidelity. And we realized for sure we needed some more training across the board. We need some more consistent processes and procedures, even though we have some of these, that doesn't always look the same at every level. And it would be nice to be able to have that closely aligned at both levels, how we do this. We have a lot of data, but just how teams are looking at data, I think sometimes, to David's question, right? Like we have a lot of available data. We have a lot of teams that can look at those. How are people looking at the data? What decisions are they making? And do we have a lot of training around how people are doing that? And then we had on there for our Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment to happen to help with some of this work. Certainly more training for paraprofessionals who are often right in the front lines there doing a lot of work with our students and supporting them in many of the interventions. Training and sort of more work on really what's called like targeted push-in, all the way up into like whether or not it's a co-teaching model, like if educators are working collaboratively together, how are they doing that, and have they had enough training to do that? And then just talking about the different types of interventionists that we might explore that could be helpful. You go to the next slide, please.
Just a question, is there a preference to push in versus pull out in these types of?
All depends on the type of situation, that's type of challenges that a student has. So many students are, if they're identified for support, they're getting both, specifically if they're on an education plan. But it depends on really like how much service they need out that's really a prescribed delivery of a program. That can't really happen in the class at the same time. So if you're getting a reading instruction program that's different from the core, you're going to do your core instruction program, and then you're going to come out at a time where you can get a prescribed reading program to help remediate that issue. And then we often put in support also within the classroom that's embedded that can help students while they're in the classroom, also with the accommodations and sort of some of the work in there with the to help the teacher out with that while the student's in the classroom. So, things that we've accomplished that we're really quite proud of because we're sort of ahead of schedule on some of these. So we definitely already have our Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment on board. That's Brenda Kelly. And so there's some, real advantages to having this position in place, for sure, in coordinating curriculum, looking at instructional practices and the analysis of data to support the work. In addition, it's critical because it allows, for us to have some increased capacity for some district-wide training, support the data-driven decision-making, and facilitate some real staff collaboration. So we've also, within that, that feeds off of that, have made some strides really with some of the data-driven practices. So at the middle school, they've already been able to complete their fall benchmarking assessments, and then the winter benchmarkings on the horizon. And data meetings with grade level teams, data coaches, and the director have been held so far to review student progress in both ELA and math. So these allow, again, for some real collaborative decision-making about student support and intervention needs. It was a real definite need at the middle school level to continue on the work that we do in sort of that same sequence that we do at elementary. As far as, you can go to the next slide. The next one. We've also been doing some work with a company called Empower Ed with Jenna Rufo. She's really fantastic. We had her last year, so this was work we began last year, and really what was like a pilot in the elementary school where we started using some more of this targeted push-in work with a special education teacher in our kindergarten classroom. And so I had that teacher pushing in a lot more to work with the gen ed teacher to provide a lot of those services together. And also using that lens of the special ed teacher in the classroom to sort of take a look at all that's happening in there and making decisions and supporting that general ed teacher with some students who had some disabilities that required a little bit more support. We had a lot of other push-in services in there as well. We had some of our related service providers in there, and we also had we had the regular kindergarten paraprofessional, then we had what's called a registered behavior technician in the classroom as well. So we started that work last year, and then continued because they're so great, and expanded that this year to a number of other teachers who are also now in classrooms to talk about those relationships and what they're doing. So this year we already had a visit from the person who's working with us. She spent about 25 to 30 minutes in classrooms using some tools to really collect some information, and then had some debriefing with those teachers in the teams to talk about some next steps. It was really great for them to be able to have the feedback and hear that and be able to problem solve, like what are the things that are working, what are some things that we really need to make this effective and really, kind of come to life for kids. So that's been a really great add. And we've been able to do some of that too with the work of minimal work that's coming out of operating funds right now. A lot of those I did allocate funds in the grants to do that. And we've used quite a bit of money from the grant to make that happen. So these are some of the next steps that we have. So we still need to do some real full PD for folks. A lot of that I think really needs to center not just on the procedures, but on student support teams. I think, that's a big next step is really how student support teams function, when they get referrals and how they're looking at data and using, collaborative problem solving. Looking at a review of, this is ongoing and it even was happening last year of like, who are the necessary players, and the roles that make this work. Then just really researching some of this high quality math and ELA intervention materials. We've been talking a lot about that. That's some work that'll be in the future for us. More training for our paraprofessionals, I think, as I mentioned. I think really that's critical. So we're really taking a look at how we can keep that at the forefront of our thoughts and planning when we're doing things, and just how do we make that happen based on, there's sometimes when contractually, like that doesn't always line up for us, but we're trying to figure out creative ways in which we can make that work. And we've even had some good success this round of PD, getting a lot more paraprofessional attendance. So I think that's been fantastic, just to even get it off the ground. And then communication to parents, really just sharing more about this. I think there's a lot of questions that come up that just about like the entire continuum and what some of those things mean, all the way up to, getting services through 504 or through IEPs, but there's just a lot that's involved there, and it's I think sometimes parents don't sort of understand that entire continuum, and I think it would be great to have some more educational sessions around that and information. So that's about all my voice can take, so hopefully your questions are limited at this point.
I do have a question, just in terms of social emotional, we read, and Bill shares with us a lot of articles about national and then state and then regionally. I deal with students, a lot of whom are out of school because of anxiety. So I know a lot of this focuses, I think, on academic, but is there an interplay in this with also with supports around kids who struggle with their whatever? I mean, anxiety is the big conversation.
Sure. It's the same sort of layer, except, so I probably didn't mention, so for instance, second step curriculum is a universal sort of curriculum, right, to bring to students social emotional learning around empathy building, problem solving, some of those critical CASEL social skills. So that's one thing that's certainly embedded as a universal. PBIS is a universal sort of approach in, sort of helping kids learn pro-social skills, expectations. So the more of those things that we build in, that would be like a universal level. We do look at it the same way. And it's like targeted group. So are there kids that just need targeted, like a small group of social skills around different things, managing emotions, whatever. And then all the way up through who needs individualized services plus that SAC, probably like doing some outreach, hooking kids up to like outpatient mental health providers, liaisoning between those folks, doing the work back and forth. So it's the same kind of process, does follow the same exact sort of umbrella, sort of look for it. It's just different as far as, you're not getting a reading intervention, you're getting sort of like a behavioral, emotional intervention.
Seems to me that that's a good thing than having two whole separate structures.
Yes, yeah, it's under the same.
Most kids don't compartmentalize like
No.
that, right? Like if I can't figure out how to do the math and I'm getting anxious,
Right.
then I'm acting out in my behavior because I
Right.
don't know what's going on. I might get mad and storm out, right?
Right.
Like that probably is an example of something that might happen with a child who's struggling with
Right.
really that they don't understand the math, but how
Right.
do they cope with that?
Yeah, and sometimes it's just trying to figure out which thing is chicken or egg or which thing is really a problem, or if there are dual problems. But like I said, some kids can live in different places, right? So like reading or math could all be a strength, and they, for some whatever reason, are just having other issues in the social emotional department, right? So you wouldn't just say they're a tier 3 student. They're really like they have tier 3 needs in this place, but might excel here in tier 1 in other places. So they're in the green and here, but they're over here needing this support. And sometimes people will shortcut that and they'll be like, they just put the kid in a bucket and they say they're tier 3. Well, it's not that their whole student is in tier 3. Usually they have areas of strength and then some area of challenge.
What grades are you targeting with this?
So it's really all grade levels. We've done a lot more work as far as the targeted push-in, like sort of model right now at the elementary level. There are teachers who are already fluidly in and out of rooms at LMMHS as our special educators, but the plan would be then to move professional development to those folks as well, so that they have the same kind of opportunities to talk about what does that look like, how does that look different than being a special education teacher in a room and just supporting a student, but how are you using your full capacity, for change and for like modifying things and for supporting the teacher, and how does that dual role work?
In terms of staffing, to what extent is it the team that we have in the new service model versus anything different we would need? I remember last year, 2 years ago, while Blur's together, there was discussion about an ELA interventionist. Are there different sort of specialties required for this model, or is it just a delivery model?
So we are actively exploring. So that would be something, both of a math and ELA intervention person and what that role is. So really carving out, first of all, what does that look like to have that intervention person? And then who are those people? What are they doing? How are they in the mix, right? So that is part of our plan to really look at those ongoing, and then bring to you, obviously, any of our needs, as a school committee, saying, these are things that really would help us to bring this, to more of a reality. But those are certainly ones that are in our discussions.
And is there any sort of what success looks like perspective? Are there particular measurements or indicators you'd use in terms of, well, at the end of the day, we therefore need, fewer people end up needing an IEP, or is it mostly fewer people are not, meeting the benchmarks? What does it look like when this is working better than what we have?
May I jump in? You'll recall that this started with Director Kelly coming to me in my first few months and saying, hey, our referral process right now, when students go to referral, we're batting about 50%. Right? 50% of them don't have a finding. And ideally, we'd love to be 80% or better, because we don't have extra staff. So every time we do one of these referrals that isn't going to end up with a finding, we're taking those staff members who are doing all that evaluation work away from helping students. So the idea with this is to build up a robust system from remediation through enrichment. So we're serving all students, if we do this and we get the interventionists and are fully staffed and fully trained, and we have this mandate, to your point, Mr. Emler, we have this mandate of the least restrictive environment. So trying not to pull students out, and when we do, it's to supplement and not to supplant what they're getting in the classroom. But the idea is to have them in the least restrictive environment where they can succeed and flourish, right? And so this is what you'll see, really, we're moving towards. So I think one of those indicators, to circle back, would be that our referrals would be, we'd have an 80% or better rate of that.
Or you might simply, you may get less referrals. I think sometimes the reaction of a student not doing well or not meeting with success is then we should evaluate so they have access to something. And so does that mean that they really are at a threshold? Because it's really a small percentage of people that are really at a threshold that meet, for disability, right? When you think about it, there's some guidelines and restrictions around that. And so it just may mean that some other things weren't happening. And so because that's not happening, then people feel like I need support. And how am I going to get that? Well, the support looks like, if the only other thing, I'm not saying it is right now, but if what people's perception is the only thing that exists for support is this top tier, tier 3 level, then that's what people are gonna want, right? They're gonna wanna get an evaluation to get this, when there could be a lot of other things in between. So I think that it's not meaning that that's what we're providing, but I think the perception sometimes is, I'm not gonna get support, my kid's not gonna be doing well. So when they're not doing well, the immediate reaction is, I want an evaluation to make sure that they can get some extra help. And extra help comes in a lot of ways, right? And it doesn't mean that we're not gonna help your student also if you don't have a disability. I think that's the other good news out of it, right? Is like, I think some people feel sometimes disappointed for some reason, if they didn't get into that category, because they think that maybe then there's the supports end. And that shouldn't mean that, right? It means that you don't have a disability, you're not here, but it doesn't mean the school's not gonna respond to you and provide supports all the way through here. So I think it's an educational piece too. I think a lot of times it's just a missing piece for also, like I said, as far as how are we educating folks, not only in our system, but the families as well, around how well we can support kids throughout the continuum. And one of the pieces of the continuum is a 504 and IEP, but it's not the only piece of the continuum.
So that means you're creating a more robust support environment
Right.
between here.
Yeah, right.
And I particularly like the idea too, when you have, we have, like anyone, we have faculty and staff coming in at different levels of training and they're coming from different backgrounds. So being able to also speak the same language and understand how we're intervening, I think is super important. And when sometimes you have to start from somewhere and then you bring everybody in together to have that consistency, I think that's super helpful for parents and for kids too.
Right.
This is how we do things and to be sort of consistent, because there sometimes is that, well, this teacher, I don't respond with that person,
Right.
Sometimes that's just personalities, but sometimes it really is about ways of instructing.
Just one other question I had, I was just thinking about this when you'd mentioned, from remediation up to enrichment. Does MTSS ever incorporate the enrichment side also, so that there's sort of
So
helping?
I didn't put in this one, but there's the new diamond is the, instead of.
Oh, there's a diamond now.
There's a diamond, new shape for everybody. Instead of the triangle, there is a diamond. At the other end is enrichment, so that you're not missing out on actually this greater continuum of, there are students that are excelling as well, right? And so I know that right now, Principal Kelly is on a committee to talk about enrichment and discussing how we're addressing that as well, because I think that is a part of the continuum that sometimes we're not necessarily hitting. Like, what do you do when students are in this side, right? And then what things do you need to, support students on that journey there, right? And so that they're not feeling like, hey, I've already accomplished this, I'm bored in class,
To Mr. Munch's question about differentiated instruction, really, when you're doing it well, you're doing it right up into the enrichment piece of it. You're not just differentiating, because you may have a kiddo sitting there that is just head and shoulders above their peers in a particular subject, topic, whatever, and you want to be able to keep them engaged and meet them where they're at. The educational term that we use is productive struggle. It's the place where it is challenging, but not so challenging that it's frustrating. That's where the real learning takes place. And we want, ideally, every student to be in this proximal zone of productive struggle.
Right, so you might be working on the same standard, but if you're excelling, you could be doing a higher level problem now, or you could be doing, so it's the same standard, but now you're going a little bit beyond that, right? And that's, just like it could be different, it's a student who's, rounding up numbers and it's, does so many, decimals or whatever, they may just be doing 2-digit numbers versus 4-digit, or 5. So there's ways of making problems different, but using the same standard and the same kind of skills, and that can range either way.
Right. Yeah, I do think, just because I can now immediately picture the diamond, just as differentiated instruction gets you a lot of ways to both sides, there is then still the 15% on each side and the
Correct.
1 to 5% on each side.
Right.
It's on top of my mind, both because of what Principal Kelly's doing, and we'll look at the curriculum strategic plan tonight. One of the items in there is more on the enrichment side, as something I think that was intended to be a priority. Mm-hmm. And so just as we continue to progress with MTSS, I think even if it's at the level of here's what staffing on that side also
Right.
would mean is definitely worth considering for the next couple of years.
We're piloting a second grade small math enrichment group right now.
Oh, cool. And Ms. Winger couldn't be here tonight, but the Odyssey of Mind is another interesting, it's different, but it's not different at all in some respects, is the kind of thing that.
Exactly.
Can I just name one thing to see if we're talking about the same thing? I hear us saying enrichment, and I think that's a really great term. I've heard people say, we no longer do gifted and talented, right? Like this quote of gifted and talented. Are they different things? I think sometimes gifted and talented, like, well, wait a minute, all kids have gifts and talents. And so this idea of gifted and talented is something that's being used. I'm not saying it's bad and we can't ever say it, but the idea is that we do want to see all of our kids excel to their level. And so is that really what we're talking about? We're talking about enrichment, as well as giving students additional opportunities like Odyssey of the Mind.
Well, I'm thinking of the same scenario where you could be a real math brain, right? But it doesn't mean in ELA you're gonna be doing enrichment, you know what I mean?
Right.
So like they're finding enrichment activities or projects, whatever it is in math because you are ahead in math, but it doesn't mean everything's gonna be, you're a kid who they just say, oh, he's gifted and just put him in the highest things everywhere, right? So
Yeah.
like still, again, it's very, data driven and looking at what a student, should be getting at what level and where are their strengths and where are the places where they need to still work and grow, right? So it would be the same kind of look, I think, as the other end of the spectrum.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, it was great.
For your work.
Welcome back. Is it inappropriate to open the fudge? If we both do it, then it's not two. And everybody else is just going to offer not to. Well, you should start. Well, I guess that is.
You don't pass these,
Who's got burdens of leadership? Quite all right. Quite all right. I'll take that hit.
What is that?
I think we either allow or not allow it.
Do you want to connect the billboard to the
Allow.
Allow?
Just say allow.
I just give my computer permission to do everything, whatever it asks.
Okay.
All right.
So this is the update on my goals and where we're at, where I'm at, and the opportunity for course correction and such. You've seen this graphic before, but I bring it up again because none of this is in silos. It is all of the work that we're doing is interconnected, and I'm sure you do see, but as Director Kelly was talking about what we're needing, we're offering some of those trainings in our PD, or will be offering in PD. So there's all of these sort of connections, the evaluations, when we do evaluations teacher evaluations with Fidelity, we start to see trends of what people need, and then we feed those into the PD as well. So in the very center is the instructional core, and this is where it all happens, right? Student, content, teacher, this is what we're about, this is what schools are about, right? And as we move outwardly, see the theory of change, strategy, and then the culture, structure, systems, resources, stakeholders, and then the environment on the outside. All of these things are not separate. They're all interconnected. And so the quote down at the bottom for the viewers at home, leaders in an interconnected organization must be comfortable sitting in the middle of a network, not at the top of an org chart. So next one, please. All right, and then this is important. You've heard me say it before. I used last time. I think I used the analogy of a conductor not playing an instrument. But I'll say, you don't see the coach out on the field. I am not in the classrooms teaching. My interaction with the with the teachers is far less than the principals. The principals are, all the research suggests, next to the teachers, they are the most important people in the organization. And my job is to support them supporting the teachers. And if we're doing this well, what is happening is I am working to help them build and manage their capacity, and then they're doing the same thing with the teachers. So again, all the research suggests they are the locus of control. So you will see me oftentimes when I'm focusing, I'm talking about, and in the updates I give you, it's about how we're supporting principals. So I don't know if the folks at home can see it. Despite countless other responsibilities, superintendents cannot supervise principals from a distance. Superintendents must invest time to develop professional relationships with their principals, to be effective managers and true instructional leaders. They must communicate the importance of this function by making principal supervision a top priority. And I'd add to that, Director of Student Services as well. And I've said this repeatedly, but we have a really strong team, and as it moves forward, I think it's even getting stronger. We're making great strides. I'm very happy. So as I move forward, and there's a lot of you'll see when we get into the goals, there's a lot of things that are accomplishments, but truly, most of them don't happen without the principals or the Director of Student Services. Next slide, please. All right, so goal one was culture, a sense of belonging for students, staff, and families. And when this was rolled out, I shared that this isn't a one and done, this isn't a 1 year thing, this is a journey. So I will go through the yellow, but in the bottom, in the gray, are the things that are still left to be done. And it says, right, that the brave and safe is not a destination, right? It's a journey. We've got an awful lot of things still. When we had the assessments of the two buildings, there was a whole list of things to harden the physical structures to make them safe, and we're working through those and getting those into the budget as well. But the physical and emotional safety. So continuing with the Brave and Safe Space initiative, working on this being a culture. A lot of our PD is around this, making sure that there's a sense of belonging for everyone. And we're not just talking about students, we're talking about staff, we're talking about families. When people feel that they belong and they're in a safe space, they operate better, whether you're an adult or a student. The facilities coordinator, we added Tom Hines to this role, and he is doing an outstanding job. I could not be more pleased. We are really starting to bring the needs of two separate schools into what's the district need for these two buildings, and being able to identify priorities. He was key in, you'll see the bright, beautiful lights as part of the National Grid incentive, and he helped coordinate all of that, which was great. We have built a behavioral threat assessment team through a Homeland Security trained facilitator. There are more schools coming on, but we are really one of the first to be getting this Homeland Security training. There's only one certified trainer in the state of Massachusetts, and they are on the exact opposite end of the state. So we have a trainer that's coming over from New York State to help us. I'm sitting on a couple of Massachusetts Chief of Police Association committees, mostly police chiefs, but they do have a few superintendents. But I sit on the School Safety and Security Committee and the Behavioral Threat Assessment Team and Violence Risk Assessment Committee. One of the things that they do really well is they bring in experts in keeping schools safe and have really robust presentations about where we are. And some facts are alarming, and there are other ones where I'm like, oh, well, we're very ahead of the curve. But I think that sitting on those, not only to represent other superintendents, but to try to get as much information to make our school as safe as possible. Addressing the building safety audit findings, those were the, again, we had early on physical audits done of both the buildings and the safety in the buildings. And we work toward those. We don't make those findings, all of those findings public, because we don't want the bad guys to know what are our strengths and our weaknesses. But you will see you will see them in the budget as we move forward. Some of them as capital expenses. We now have radios for the staff in both buildings and in my office. We are reinforcing the entryway glass. It was one of the things that, while not inexpensive, was a low-hanging fruit. It was an easy way to get a lot of safety. And we were very fortunate in town that wherever the Lenox police are, they're only a few minutes away, and this entry glass slows down somebody trying to force their way into the school with enough time for the police to arrive. We've been upping our crisis preparedness, our drills. We've been doing more advanced drills. We've been working toward reunification. We've been having some of those drills as well. Chance favors the prepared mind. So we're always thinking of this. We do hot washes afterwards where the fire chief, the police chief, those involved, the state police liaison, our SRO, look at how we did and what we need to improve, and we work toward continual improvement. We have a communication specialist that we contract with, and they help us with a whole bunch of things. But one of the things that they specialize in is if there is a crisis, they work to set up a communication command center and make sure that information is getting to everyone that it needs to get to. Parents, particularly if there's a crisis situation, want to have accurate information in a timely manner that's clear. And where we are a small district, our admin team will be dealing with the crisis. So having people that specialize in getting this information out clearly is important. The elementary school really are champions in positive behavioral interventions and supports the PBIS. You will hear Principal Kelly speak about that a lot, and as a positive way to curb behavior and instead of it being more punitive. We did have at the open house, we had the district attorney come and be there for parents and hand out a bunch of literature about some of their programs and stuff. And we have been working with Change Makers for Good. As far as, this is Phil Fogelman's company. He was with the ADL for years and years and worked very closely with our district. And then when he retired, he started his own company and knows us. And we've been continuing along the same vein for the work with belonging. And then school community wellness, well-being. We are looking for opportunities to move outside of the ordinary and show staff that as an employer we care about their well-being. And one of the things was to have our convocation in a special place. And one of our partners, the Mount, was generous enough to put us under a large lawn tent for convocation, and just again a nice way to not have it be the same old run-of-the-mill thing and show that we care. Myself trying to, again, and my primary role really is to work with the principals, but at the same time to meet and greet students and staff upon arrival at the schools, when again to try to be at events even outside of the school day, to have people know that the person sitting up at town hall cares to do classroom visits. Again, PBIS. The ADL, we've got the peer monitoring system going on. The elementary school's working is second step. The wellness committee is got the Way to 8. This is the cell phone pledge to try to cut down screen time. You remember the Surgeon General had put that out as a real health risk and a mental health risk for students. The elementary school also has the ROAR team that supports students getting caught doing good things and tying that in with that wonderful book vending machine to get something that's meaningful and fun to get dispensed. We have been moving toward more opportunities for student leadership. The wellness committees are pretty robust. Making the EAP readily available and making sure that the employee assistance program that our staff members know this is available to them, and one of the benefits. I don't know what happened. Coffee and conversation, parents with the SACs at the LMHS for the school adjustment counselors, to parents to come in and be able to meet in a more informal way and have interaction there. And then we've moved from our homegrown surveys to the panorama, which will be coming out in the near future, the climate surveys of students, staff, and families, to get a sense of where we're at, and with subsequent surveys, how we are doing to make those improvements. Goal 2, instruction and curriculum. This also is multi-year. This isn't something that just happens in a few months, but we are moving in a really good direction. I appreciate the school committees and the finance committee and the select board's support of the director of curriculum instruction and assessment. This is huge. Director Kelly spoke to it a bit, but the move with the state is toward what they're referring to as deeper learning, data-informed conversations. In 6th grade through 8, Brenda has already been able to bring this up in advance of what I thought that she was going to be able to do. She's already they've already been examining data and looking at data across the middle school. And she serves on the board of directors for the Massachusetts School Administrators Association, and is on a committee there looking at deeper learning. The assistant principals are collaborating together to make the transition from elementary to middle school for students and teachers, to make it more smooth, and I commend them on that. As you know, we were one of a handful of schools that adopted DESE's new evaluation rubric, but we are now using it in earnest, and it has folded into it the belonging. Instead of this being a separate column, it is integrated throughout the rubric. So our staff are being evaluated on that as well. The new school level administrator evaluation rubric is what used last year and will continue to use with the building principals. I'm incredibly excited about our mentor leadership team. I co-authored a book on teacher leadership, and this, had I not written it, I would have put this in. If I was writing the book today, I would put this in. This is Teachers Leading Teachers. This is a new induction and mentoring program. We have a group of teachers from each school, led by 2 teacher coordinators under the auspices of the director of CIA, and who are devising the best, and again, when you think of this as a whole, right, the best introduction to the Lenox way of doing things. And if somebody's going to leave the profession, the research suggests that they're going to forever, they're going to leave it within the first 3 years. So during this first 3 years, we are providing robust new teacher induction and mentoring with benchmarks for that the mentors have to reach to be able to be a mentor and such. I really am very, very thrilled at that teacher leadership. Making professional development Lenox specific more meaningful and aligned to our district needs. Taking a look at what do we need and instead of having it be more general, have it be really specific to meet our needs. We do have a little bit a different demographic, and our needs are, every district needs are a little bit different. And to be able to get something that is really meaningful for you, I think as an educator, that's powerful and that moves the needle. You just had the Director Kelly's presentation on MTSS. We've been working at both schools to align field trips to the curriculum, so it isn't just a trip, it's an experience that's relevant to the academic work the students are doing. Support staff, we've got the piloted program, and so we're supporting staff that come in with bachelors to earn their masters, and one of the ideas there is to be able to get the very best teachers out of teacher preparation programs, knowing that they can earn their masters with us and make us more competitive, because the pool is shallower than it was a decade ago. And then we want students, regardless of who's in front of them, to have the best experience they can and expect some consistency. And with that, we've developed a substitute teacher handbook so that all of our substitutes are able to meet our expectations as well, and have them clearly written out and have them have a handbook where they can see what they need. And then coherent and viable curriculum with rigor and relevance. So the pieces are a clear written objective. So moving toward being able to have every evaluator go into class and have clear written objectives, and not just for the evaluation, but for the students. The students should be able to look up and say, well, this is exactly why I'm doing this. This is how it relates to what I was doing 2 days ago and what I'm going to be doing 2 days from now. Formative assessment and adjustments to instruction as needed. And we're still working on it. It doesn't happen overnight, but we are making strides. Coherent and viable curriculum with rigor and relevance. So I think we're really a long way toward that in the elementary school, and we're seeing this research based with primary sources in the humanities. Our humanities department at LMHS is really doing that well, and we're looking to make sure that it happens everywhere. And I'm not in any way criticizing other areas. It's just that these folks really are excelling at it. And one of the things that continues to separate us is us offering Latin. When you want to talk about being able to have a rigorous curriculum. Focused observations and evaluations with inter-rater reliability, and what that means is that regardless of who walks in, if I were to walk into a classroom and Dr. Ames was walking in a classroom and Director Kelly was walking in a classroom and Principal Kelly was to walk into a classroom, that if we saw the exact same lesson, you would expect that we wouldn't be all over the place, that there would be a certain amount of reliability, that you're not going to get a different evaluation. There's going to be a band of where we're at, and we need training on that, and it is on one of our upcoming agendas to focus on this and how we get from where we are to there. Authentic literacy. And the research suggests that purposeful primary mode of learning, and to do it in not just in ELA, but across content areas. And again, it doesn't happen in a month, but we are working toward that. And then the content and thinking skills. This is an area where we still have some growth as we move forward and really be able to identify what it is that we are asking our educators to be able to provide and for us to be able to monitor that it's happening. And then the third goal is student engagement, that there's a relevance for all students. We're to utilize the community resources and tools. We're in a community that is rich with business partners and resources, and we're tapping into them even more. But we could be doing it. But we could still be doing it more. And we're looking to expand the pathways. We've applied for information pathways. Again, if you look to increase the recognition and celebration of non-academic, non-athletic achievements, increase opportunities for alternatives to college. If this isn't what they want, if they want to go into the military or into business or into trade school, we should be the place that provides that for everybody. We're really, really good at the college piece, and what we want to do is make sure that we're addressing this for everyone. So again, the pathways is one of those approaches. We've got some internships at LMHS. We have robust and supportive business partners, and I need to tap into them in some more creative ways. And the school committee has put together a community engagement group that is looking at not just student and parent engagement, but also community engagement, which I think is a very good thing. And that's not the only thing that's happening here, right? So there's a bunch of other stuff. We talked about the communication specialists. Well, we're using them to try to get out positive press as much as we can, celebrating students and staff accomplishments, posting stuff to Instagram and Facebook and our website, trying to keep our website relevant and up to date, so so you're not going and things are really old, or there's dead links or that sort of thing. We're trying to reconnect with alumni with the school, and this is beneficial in a number of ways, not only to keep our alumni connected to the school and have them looking back to our website to see what some of their classmates are up to or doing, but also to inspire our students. Some of our alums have done amazing things, and for our students to be able to see that the people who walked these halls in the 70s, even the 60s, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s are doing all of these amazing things, and so can they. In systems effectiveness, trying to move from being paper-centric to having e-forms and digital documents. We're well on the way toward that. The Classroom Edition project, which now has a new aspect to it with the MSBA announcement that we're on the list, that we're on their list for approval. The budgetary coordination, and we're making a little bit of a shift in how we do budgets, and giving the principals more ownership of their budgets. Previously, it was set up such that they had to come to Melissa for every sort of change, and the idea is to move it and build up that capacity so that they can, again, as the locus of control, know what are those educational instructional needs and be able to make some of those changes themselves and understand in the creation of the budget. So we're bringing them into that more. systemic consistency, reliability, and stability. Been a lot of administrative changes in trying to across the board keep this admin team and have people know what they can count on and what's next. And you take a little bit of a breath if you know that, right, that things are going to be the same and there's not a lot of turnover. Trying to work toward certainly problem resolution, and whether it's internal or external. Cost savings projects. There's several of them, but the LED lights are a prime example of that. And when all is said and done, and there's an interest-free loan for this, but there's an immediate savings, and when the interest-free loan is done, we'd be looking to save over $8,000 a month on our electric bill. So, trying to be good stewards of the taxpayer's dollar. One of the other things is, trying to have the school committee not be surprised, keep them updated on not just things they're having nationally and statewide, but so that no one's in the supermarket and says, hey, why was there an ambulance at the school on Thursday? And you should know that information. And I think it makes these meetings run more smoothly. We've got the admin and principal meetings where we pick themes and we really delve into those and look to solve problems. It's a move from sort of everything in the kitchen sink meetings. We've got district office meetings to try to make sure that we are also being as efficient as we can. I know that when the interim town administrator, town manager was in, he was having department head meetings that I was participating in as well. That was good. I've had meetings with the head custodians to get a sense of, even though we have a facilitator, to have a sense of what are the big needs there at each school, and and let them know as well that, right, just because I'm not in the school, it doesn't mean I don't care or I'm not interested. Monthly meetings with the LEA leadership, serving as the town school liaison. I work with the other department heads, community liaison. Been working with Mr. Cass on and the LEA on job description reviews and updates. Some of them are out of date and some of them didn't exist. You'll be moving on to your final policy, the policy review, but that was a big lift, nicely done. There's a number of legal issues, and I communicate with the attorneys, negotiations, staff recruitment, and of course snow days, which we just had one. I think that's it. Yeah. And attend and present. So my own professional development, right? Even though I am not new to the superintendency, this is my first superintendency in Massachusetts, so I am part of the new superintendent induction program. I attend my committee, the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents Annual Executive Institutes, their joint conference with the school committee association, and locally the superintendents of Berkshire County meet as a roundtable. I think that's it. So, it's an opportunity to talk about course corrections of things you didn't see that you'd like to see, or whatever.
Phew.
Thank you.
Are you getting any rest?
What do you do all day?
Bonbons. Amy keeps me in bonbons.
Thank you for that.
Terrific.
Thank you
Thank
for all the work.
Impressive, very impressive.
Right. Well, again, the very first slide, right? It doesn't happen
Appreciate that.
without the admin team. They're the ones that are on the field. Thank you. That concludes my report.
Thank you very much for everything.
Thank you.
And there are the LED lights back on. They really are brighter. It's very pleasant.
He-
All right. We have a few other smaller items to address. Unfinished business. We have our naming committee formally formed.
We do, and Ms. Graham has graciously agreed to chair this first naming committee and just guide it. There's a community request to have the scoreboard that Adams Community Bank funded, named after somebody, and the committee will determine whether it's a worthy ask, right? Is this the best candidate? And then if it is, they will move forward to bring it to this full committee.
Thank you.
I think I also would envision utilizing this committee, because it's a solid group of people here, not only for just this specific request, but to help you going forward and the school committee going forward, and maybe come up and see what they see as important in this individual or a future individual, or maybe come up with some kind of a rubric that
Yes.
we could rate.
Yeah, that would be,
And that would be helpful to you, and then for you to bring it to the school committee.
and it may be different, depending on what the naming request is, and the rubric may need to be changed if it's something different, but yes, and this one, where it's high school, it will be, Dr. Ames would be, but if someone wanted to name something at Morris, then Principal Kelly would,
Right.
you know, so, yeah.
I don't know if it showed up as a tab or anything, but at some point, we're going to post like who's on the committee, or is that, I don't know if it's already been done. I mean, it's community members too, right? So not just,
Yeah, we got a list of it.
I sent
Did
it
we
to,
get it?
I sent it to you all, I did not send it out to the
no,
community.
no, that's okay, maybe I just missed that, sorry about that. Yeah.
Sorry.
There's a list of numbers.
Yeah. And in a sense,
There's two committee members.
There's two community, two committee, Ms.
Yeah, yeah.
Winger and,
Yeah.
yep. Administrator, two staff members,
Okay.
and a student, yes.
Students.
Yep,
I just must have missed that. Thank you, sorry.
How many staff members?
two.
yeah. And in essence, this is sort of a pilot of it. If it goes well, we should then codify it as a sort of standard policy, but
Yeah.
we don't need the policy to start doing it, so it's great to have it out and off and running.
Awesome.
CHPE framework, Dr. Ames presented at the last meeting about what was happening there, and we had taken as a to-do out of that, just figuring out how we wanted to make sure we had an opportunity for community input. We discussed, Ronnie and I, with Bill at last time we were together, what might make sense is something a number of members of the committee have brought up at various times, which is just wanting to have an opportunity for, in general, community members, parents to be able to talk to members of the school committee, not just about one specific issue, but the broader range of issues that we have before us. And so I think our suggestion would be that we aim for, in the February timeframe, to try to put a set of sort of informal gatherings by group of grade levels. So pre-K through 2, 3, 5, 6, 8, 9, 12. So a total of 4 meetings, hold 2 in the Morris Library, 2 of them here. Have a couple of committee members who want to participate in each one, and just invite community members with an invite out probably from the principals as part of their regular update, to say, here are some examples of some of the issues we are working through this year, but frankly, anything else would be welcome as well, and then have conversations with whoever wants to come about whatever they want to talk about. So that is sort of the preliminary thought, but if folks would want to modify that, certainly we can modify it in any way.
I guess I'm confused. Are we talking about the physical ed framework? So those 4 meetings would be specifically to address this?
No, that would be one of the things, if that was something people wanted to raise issues about, it would be a good opportunity to do it. But I think rather than say we want to have, there will be a series of meetings just about that, there might be other issues that folks want to talk about
I mean,
as
I
well.
personally, as a school committee member, would not be comfortable even addressing this or trying to answer those questions. I don't think that, we have enough knowledge about that. We're not in the classroom. We don't know what they're teaching. We're not there now, what they're doing versus what they plan to do. I wouldn't be comfortable addressing this at all with, I think we would need to have the people that are actually instructing the kids and the administrator, if they had any questions, I would tend to refer back to them. In this particular area, I'm hearing you, what you're saying as far as all the other meetings or different topics that come, this particular topic, I would not be comfortable as a school committee member trying to answer questions without having the people that actually instruct this to be there. That's just my feeling.
May I? Yeah. What I took away from that meeting was not that you would necessarily have, the school committee members would have all the answers, but to be open to the constituency and not just limit it to one thing. Somebody might want to talk about this, but 3 other people may want to talk about other things, and then to be able to sort of funnel that, to me and have it be handled appropriately wherever.
I heard that too, and I agree with that. I'm just saying in this particular subject, if it were to be brought up,
Yeah.
I kind of go back to what we kind of always do, which is refer back to the appropriate person, which would be either the admin or the health teacher. And I wouldn't be comfortable taking that on. That's all
Yeah.
I'm saying.
Okay. Yeah, I think what
Do
we
you
would.
like the idea?
Yeah, and I think exactly to that point, because that came up, did we want to, should we have the principals there? Should we have other staff there? And I think for purposes of this, it will actually be a good opportunity for folks to just give feedback to us. I think even as we've seen, we have a public comment period. It's obviously not an often aggressively utilized one. It is not an ideal way to give feedback. And so I think the expectation would be, it would be an opportunity to give feedback and raise concerns on any topic that people do have them, or if they are looking for answers, there is either something that we can take as an item, okay, this is something people need answers on, and we need to find a way to answer it, or we need to know who to refer people to. So to your point, if people have questions about the health curriculum, we're not the ones to answer those, but we can let people know who it is. For that matter, if people have questions about the design of the new school building, beyond what I've seen in the pictures, I can't answer that one, but I can tell them who's working on the school building committee and where those materials are. So I think it would explicitly not be a situation where we are offering to be in a position to answer all of everybody's questions, but that we want them to raise things that are concerns for them, and we can, in a sense, be traffic cop where we do know where the answers are. And if there are places where if somebody raises something, we say, that's a really great question, we've never gotten that question before, then it's a to-do that we would want to know people had that question and can follow up.
It gives us a little bit of an opportunity for some two-way conversation too about questions, and then if it really is that people are like, well, what we would really like to see is about the health communication, then we can bring that back, really what you've said. But an opportunity to sometimes people just have questions, like you said, that's not the format that we do it anyway with the open comment. So I think if we did like a coffee and conversation, see what the influx is. We had a couple of community forums when we were doing the superintendent search, and we didn't have a huge amount of parents showing up. And we're not setting this up with the idea, well, maybe no one will show up. I think the hope would be that people really would show up to give an opportunity to give feedback and ask questions, and not, and then we can get a sense of where people are really feeling like they're not getting answers about things. We can think about whether something more formal needs to happen.
Yeah, I like the idea of, like say, coffee with some school committee members or something. You know, obviously we can't have a quorum, but a couple of people and
Right. We could break it up amongst us as to which
cookies and coffee
levels
or
we want to
whatever,
be
and
at.
people can come and chat, and if they have a 30-second question, that's it. If they want to talk a little longer, that's fine too. We just.
And yeah, if it's understood that, you know, we're not there to be subject matter experts in anything. We're there to listen to them and hear their concerns and again, bring what we hear back to the committee as a whole.
Yeah, almost a meet and greet kind of.
Yeah, unless it's about the policy book, which I expect everyone to have memorized front to back. Byron, Kim, does that address your concern?
It does.
Okay.
It does. I have concerns. I think it could be, I have concerns, but yes, it does address it.
I wonder if there's any way to leverage some of the other events in the buildings, you know, like a parents' night or teacher conferences or something.
Yeah, that was something we looked at. Those have mostly happened in the fall, but I think, you know, certainly when we look at the calendar, well, let's.
And remember doing them, there's such a demand for your time to get from thing to thing to thing. I think one year,
Yeah.
years ago, I don't know, we did have a table even out in the foyer for like back to school night, and it was sort of like, it was just, other than grabbing a quick cup of coffee or a snack, people were rushing. I remember doing that, trying to rush through, so I think having it designated and hope that people will want to come, just, you know, have, like I said, conversation and snacks. We'll have 4 different ones, so we can divvy ourselves up however we want. Do you want us to let you know what we?
Yeah, I don't think we have to worry about, yeah, we'll take a look back at the calendar, and then once we know some dates, and say, you know, whether based on dates or grade levels you love or hate, we can,
Don't hate any of them.
we can, yeah, just make sure there are sort of 2 or 3 people for each one, and so, you know, that's a total of 8 to 12 spots, so if everyone wants to do 1 or 2, that'll cover it well. All right, so more to come on that, but certainly have some time, and in the interim, if you have questions, if in the interim you're getting questions about questions, as in, when do we get to talk about X, or are you doing something on Y, that is something that will be coming up. In addition to which, of course, everyone should know they can talk to us about anything at any time. And that brings us to the approval of policy section I, on which,
You've been waiting for this all night, haven't
what's that?
you? You've been waiting for this all night.
This is, you know what, it's in the Jewish religion, there's a celebration on the day when you get to the end of the Torah and you actually simultaneously, well, I have to warn you, what you do, at least I remember when I was a kid, they unscroll the entire Torah all the way around the synagogue, and the rabbi reads the very end of the last bit and the very start then. And then you roll it right back up and keep going. And so I was thinking we should have section A right under section I, and we could begin our review, which surely by now it's out of date.
It's possible.
But no, we will tackle section I here, and then rejoice, and then in the new year, see what, if anything, in the meantime has come up we might want to take on as well. So if there are any...
And I will say, again, thank you for the work, for everybody, because there's some that are here, not here, that have done on this policy, and for the presentation that you gave us, Orin, I kind of went through all the changes and then going back through and checking my own box about stuff, so thank you for that. And the only other question I have is where we would go back to the other ones, where there were places where it seemed clear that we wanted to dig a little deeper, like, is there a matrix of those somewhere?
Yeah, so I have that separate queue, which will then become the policy queue for us to start talking about.
Well, thank you for that, yeah.
And just to highlight, I think one really interesting one in this section was on field trips, the question of ensuring that all costs were always either covered or could be covered as needed. And that was one where we said, based on this year's budget, we can't declare it to already be our policy, but is certainly an aspiration. And so that will, I think, that's a good example of one we definitely want to come back to quickly. Well, if someone wanted to make a motion.
So I would love to move that we accept policy I in its revised format as presented. Or shared with us.
Seconded by.
And I don't have any I personally don't have any flags or changes, so, thank you.
Thank you. All right, all in favor? Aye. It is approved. And we will now take everything A through I, and it will, rather than live in the 500 page PDF going forward, there is a now web-based system that MASC provides to districts. And so I believe you can still generate a 500-page version if you want, but it is also a searchable, sortable thing that will always just have the latest version of
Where do we come
everything.
down on like a footer or something that identifies?
What's that?
Where do we come down on a footer or something that identifies the last revision date of the document?
So each one, when we send them in, the documents we send into them will have footers telling them that, and they will then post it accordingly. So each one will individually then show the date of adoption, which for now will be the dates we've voted over the last couple of years on each package of stuff, and then can be updated going forward.
And MASC is going to add that date to the...
Sorry?
MASC will be adding that date to the...
Yes, so I will send it to them. The files I send them will have those dates for each file from the meeting at which we approved it. And so they then put that into the pages.
Yay.
And we should thank Liz LaFond of MASC, who has been shepherding us through this whole process and has both a surprising enthusiasm for school committee policy manuals and an encyclopedic knowledge of it. So she's been
Pick up the phone and call her when there is a question.
Yeah,
It's amazing.
She's been a huge asset to us. All right. Final item, new business. We were going to take a look at the curriculum section of the strategic plan tonight, which is a couple of pages on curriculum and instruction, most of which essentially just describes the fact that curriculum and instruction are important. But in particular, I at least wanted us to take a quick look at the action steps. So if anyone else had anything else on it, we could talk about that, and then we'd run through just action steps and anything else that we might want to have on the list going forward.
Thank you.
All right, well, in action steps, and this actually connects very nicely to the superintendent's goals presentation. The first one is ensuring vertically and horizontally integrated, inclusive, engaging, age-appropriate curriculum. And that's one that is sort of, particularly with the creation of the CIA director position, actively kind of underway and being done, which I think is terrific. Second one, establish a committee to reevaluate the current curriculum and best practices. Essentially falls underneath that, and I think especially with respect to the humanities work being done on primary sources and broadening that curriculum, seems to be very well underway as well.
Are we only reevaluating to see if it's a diverse, inclusive education experience, or are we evaluating more than that?
That is a good question. I think it certainly is part of it. I don't know if there are other things you...
Yes, no, more than that, and this sort of falls under the umbrella of the curriculum instruction and assessment coordinator as we move forward, examining what we are using for our curriculum and making determinations of how do we align it both vertically and horizontally, right? So regardless of who your teacher is, if you're being taught this subject, you don't have to be in lockstep, but you should be getting basically the same content and walking away with the same knowledge, and also vertically that we're aligned with everything from academic vocabulary to hitting the standards. I
wasn't really getting that from that bullet point.
Yeah.
I don't know if maybe you have a chance to.
So this is
Right, the bullet point is what was in the strategic plan, that we are doing more than was in the strategic plans.
Yeah, this was generated 5+ years ago, yes.
But just to get an appreciation of what that means, reevaluating curriculum.
Right.
And the nuts and bolts of reevaluating curriculum.
Right.
How does one start? Does one start with grade, with school, with subject, with, how do you reevaluate a curriculum?
So I asked Brenda to take a look and to say, hey, this is where we were before, knowing that it was just a snapshot of where we were before. As we move forward, where do we see ourselves and where do we want to be, and what's still relevant and what isn't. But I think that Brenda's already done a masterful job at Morris of looking at the curriculum and identifying what needs to be, and now is taking that, as is the plan, into the middle school. So well, I guess I am putting her on the spot, but how, the question is, you came into the Morris School and now you have you've got a very aligned curriculum, and you're taking this and moving it into the middle school. To Mr. Rimler's question, where do you start when you take a look at it?
So, so this year we started, we are just doing our benchmarking and looking at data. And I need to be at the middle school more often, but my needs at Morris are still important this year. But there is a whole process that you can follow to look at high-quality curriculum. DESE put out a whole structure where you send out those people who are interested in examining a certain part of curriculum. It takes us through a process. It's called Implement MA. It's right on the DESE website. You can go right there and it'll bring you right through a whole process. It is a long process. First, the whole team learns about the process. We prepare what we're going to do together. Then you investigate different curriculums, maybe pilot, you select them, then you launch a curriculum, and then you monitor it as you're implementing it. But it's not just a one-year process. It takes a bit to implement a new curriculum, depending on what it is.
And to the curriculum director's point, to answer your question is looking at the benchmarks of where are our students, where are they falling, where are the deficiencies, right, and where are the strengths, and then you start to understand that, and then so when you're going for a curriculum, you want to identify a curriculum that's going to meet our students and what our needs are. So by starting with that as a place of, okay, how are our students doing? Where do they fall here, right? And then identifying a curriculum that's going to address those needs. And additionally, in addition to that instructional core, right, is also the actual instruction. And we're working. We have masterful teachers. I mean, you saw the results nationwide of where our schools fall. It's very, very impressive. But it doesn't mean that we rest on our laurels, right? We can always do better. We can always tweak things and make adjustments, and that's that's where we are. But to Brenda's point, it's a multi-year process, and just like policy, it's cyclical. It doesn't end, right? As soon as you get to the end of it, you're ready to be reevaluating the next piece of curriculum. Thank you.
Thank you. I think thinking about things that we have talked about a lot recently that were not in the action steps last time around. One is the non-college pathways and innovation pathway work, which is something I would think probably is a bigger focus for us now than maybe it was 5 years ago. And then the other one is, as Brenda was just saying, the sort of extending the curriculum work that's been done at the elementary school up into the middle high school. So those are the other ones that strike me as likely, sort of significant for us going forward. I don't know if there are other things on folks' mind that you feel like we're seeing a lot of.
I mean, it seems like it's, when we're doing and evaluating the strategic plan, is that something like evaluating curriculum is always an ongoing thing, but in creating the MTSS and having the curriculum director and we have more of a mechanism under which this consistency of being evaluated to move it forward, as opposed to we're always evaluating curriculum, right? It's what I like is it's like a shared conversation, a shared process of people getting trained in how to do it. And so that should stay on our strategic plan, our strategic goals, but within the context of the processes have actually been put in place. Now it's not aspirational, it's like these are the processes in place and this is what we do. And I feel like some of the presentations of even the steps through the MTSS and Brenda's work are really great. Kind of, they've already got it formatted in a multi-year program.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I think
that's a
that
great,
kind of provides
yeah.
us with the,
That's a great point, that we sort of, a lot has now been built, and now it is more about making it stick, to
Yeah, and then-
a horribly mixed metaphor. We'll have to go with
Making it stick.
Bill, remind me what the time frame is to move into the full-time curriculum? What was the original intent?
So it was, the original intent was 3 years, with this year being the first year, for sixth grade, right? So pre-K to 6, next year being pre-K to 7, the third year being pre-K to 8, and then having Brenda move to take this job on from pre-K through 12 and have Holly become the principal. Now, and I don't want to make any promises, but right now we're on a trajectory to be ahead of that schedule. We are accomplishing a lot, and Holly is proven to be very competent.
You could work on that goal maybe to kind of fast forward.
We are. What we don't want to do is set anybody up for, right? We want to make sure that Holly's in the best place that Holly can be, and that Brenda's in it. But that is we have those admin conversations that, gee whiz, we were looking at this original trajectory,
It
and
seems kind of far out.
it does, right? And now we seem to be significantly ahead. If that trend holds, I would not be surprised that we could maybe do this a year ahead of schedule. I don't want to promise it yet, but
Bill said you're ahead of schedule.
and part of it also has budgetary consequences, so I think part of it was also to not try to like create a whole, it's being able to move that into our ongoing budget with other adjustments, so
yeah.
it's good.
Yeah.
All right. Any other key curriculum-related items? Brenda, anything else we need on curriculum?
Just pulling up a list.
You can think about it and get back to
No, I
us.
think this is a good beginning, but as we move forward, I can let you know.
Well, I think that's what's cool, is you being able to tell us what should be on our strategic goals as opposed to us, because
Yes.
you guys are doing it. Thank you for that.
All right. That is what's on today's agenda. He said,
Happily move to adjourn.
all in favor?
Thank you.
Aye.
Thank you all, and
Thank you very much, everybody.
thank everybody.